So the next in line after territory is the government. The government is now one of the elements of a state, which is necessary for recognition of state as a proper entity. So what is government? A people living permanently on a definite territory do not form a state without a government, to which they render habitual obedience. So there must be a government, and you are required to be obedient towards your government. A people without a government is mere assemblage of human beings. If there is a community living in an area, it is a population, it has a territory they are living on, but this is not a state unless they have a politically organized community, a politically organized setup that is called government. So a people without a government is mere assemblage of human beings and not a politically organized community. Government is the machinery or agency through which the will of state is formulated and expressed. What is the purpose of government? It is machinery or agency through which the will of state is formulated and expressed. There is a writ of state. There is a authority of state. But this authority manifests itself or shows itself in the form of government. So the government is basically the actor, is basically the agent of doing things on behalf of state. The state plans and acts through the government. The state's plans and actions are executed by the government. It is the government that administers the state. The government works as an administrator or administrator of the state, keeps law and order, formulates the policy of state, and organizes the people dwelling within its territory. The government is a isn't a concept. A state is a concept. The government is a body. It comprises of some people who are bestowed with some duties, some charges to act on behalf of state. So, a state without a government is not possible. Every state has some form of government. Sovereignty. The fourth and one of the most important elements for a state is its sovereignty. What sovereignty is? Sovereignty is being the most important power, being the supreme power, being able to exercise your will, being able to defend yourself from any external interference or aggression. It means the supreme and original unlimited power exercised over all persons and associations within the boundaries of state, independent of every outside power. Here, the persons are its citizens, and associations are all the groups, people, communities, businesses, and whatever firms or franchises or all the businesses that are going on in the state. So, sovereignty of a state means that state is supreme, original, and having the most power over its citizens and all the associations within its boundaries, independent of every outside power. So, state will be able to im- uh, implement its policies and make people abide the law when they have the sovereignty. There is no external interference in the matters of state, no interference in the basically in whatever state wants to exercise or implement over its citizens or all the businesses. The state alone is the sovereign association. Sovereignty means that no one is equal to it. A state, therefore, is alone in exercising all these authorities that it is exercising over its citizens and all the businesses going around within its boundaries. It has two aspects. Internal, the state is supreme over all person and association. No person, no business, no association, no political party, no businesses, no businessman, or every or any form of association or community or caste or race or whatever is above the state. Everything lies after the state. The state is most important, most supreme, and sovereign authority. And when we discuss sovereignty as an external thing, it is independent of all the foreign controls or powers. So keep in mind when we are discussing it internally, so there is no person or association that is above or equal to the state. And when we are discussing the sovereignty concept as an external concept, it means that no external power, any state, or any entity is able to exercise its will upon the state. No state is allowed to intervene in the matters of another state. No state is allowed to attack on another state. No state is allowed to intervene in the internal matters of a state or make any kind of intervention, be it physical in form of war or attack, or by any other means that like kind of the cyber crime sort of thing. So, the state is a sovereign power. It has control over itself, its territory, and everything belonging to its boundaries, within its boundaries. So, no external dictation is allowed to be accepted by a state. The state can reject it. It is its sovereignty that is at stake if any other state, any other body, or any other association is trying to implement or interfere in a state's internal matters or guiding its foreign policy or its military power or whatever. So, what next is beside these four elements, there are some other elements that define that are important to for a state to be considered a state, and that is unity. One of them is unity. Unity means that the people living in that area have some kind of unity, and they agree to the power of state unanimously, and they are agreeing to whatever the state has the powers, whatever laws they're being made that are being the duties for them or whatever rights the states are giving them. So the element of unity is very important because if there is some kind of distrust between people or communities living within that state, so the purpose of state of a single entity and everything about its sovereignty, its territory, and all these things will be at stake. So if there are internal rifts within any state, the problem of governance and the problem of representing itself as a representative of that community of people becomes difficult. So obviously, the unity is one of the very important elements, though it is not a very much important to be considered a state, because we all know that there are some groups or minorities or separatist elements within states. So yes, there is kind of internal problems within states, but on a larger canvas, the unity must be there. We know that whenever we as Pakistanis are very fragmented, we have our own interest, community interest, or racial interest, or provincial interest. But when it comes to Pakistan, for the cause of Pakistan, when Pakistan need us, we show that we as a nation, we as uh, a population, we as Pakistani citizens are united. So unity is another important thing. Continuity and permanence. What the continuity and permanence here is that the state remains there. The state is not like uh, a government. It exists in all circumstances unless there is a very revolutionary sort of thing that or something that changes the course and every realities of your daily life. The state exists. The state exists as we see that under the British it was a united India, but the wave of decolonization when British declared independence to subcontinent in form of two states, Pakistan and India. So this was there was a new state coming into being that came into being. It was an independence movement. It was a massive movement that was required to achieve another state. So the state continues to exist. It is a permanent thing. It does not like hide itself, or it just does not go beyond. It does not just diminishes, or it does not like removes itself, it remains there. It is a permanent entity. It means that state continues to exist in all times. Government may change, but the state continues to exist. We know there is a term for government, like for Pakistan, it is a 5 years term that every government has the right to govern every whatever the political setup is there in the federal or provinces. It is there is a time frame for them to serve the country. While the state remains there, state does not change with every election. The states have frequently changed in history. State times be slow. State like there could be a slow form of evolution in which the state change. Like there is an example of England that once it was a very absolute monarchy, and then is it evolved, and now it is just a crown which is matlab having its authority over as a figure now. The crown there is a figure. It isn't just an institution, but the affairs of states are managed by the political system, the political government, the elected government of England. इसी तरह से and at times by forcible revolutions. So yes, there's a history of revolution, as I've stated that independence movement, we carved two states out of the United British India. So uh, two of these examples are France and Russia. Then when we study the world politics, we see the world history, we see that there was very important events in the history, and that is French Revolution and Russian Revolution. And there were monarchies once, and later they changed their system of government. They developed new states. So Russia from monarchy it became a communist state. Okay? And it was at first during all this time it was USSR. And after the Cold War, when the Cold War ended, it declared itself as Russia. It is now a state that is known as Russia. Moreover, one state can be conquered and annexed by another state. So there are things happen there. There have been a history when there's a history when no, different rulers just go and conquer the lands, and they make those states part of their own territory, part of their own state. And there has been the history of annexation, though it is not very frequent in modern times, but it was once a very important exercise. So yes, it is the continuity and permanence that is an element of the state. Equality is one of the very important things when it comes to state, and it means that all the states in the world, whether they are big or small, whether they have a large population or a very small population, whether they have very advanced arms or a very big military, a very strong defense, or those having weaker ones, are all equal for international law or as a member of international society. It is the attribute of external sovereignty. So here the equality is on the international frame. It is not about like within a state. We know within a state there are different classes, there are different groups, and there are different people who have more privileges and other ones are less privileged. So here is one other thing, and it was regarded as unscientific use of the word state. Previously, when we'll study the evolution, we will get to know that states have existed in different forms. We know once there were city states, there were empires, and now there are states as nation states in the modern world order. So states are even now, even in the quite if we just go back a century, so the word state was used for small entities too, the small states too that were part of a big empire or a big um, rule or a big state within a state. It was not a state within a state in terms of sovereignty and its defense and everything, but it was like a state. It was named a state. It was mostly governed by some Nawab or some Maharaja when we study it for the subcontinent. As there are examples of the state of Jammu and Kashmir, the state of Hyderabad Dakkan, the state of Sawat, Chitral, and Bahawalpur. These states, the state of Sawat, Chitral, and Bahawalpur, they annexed with Pakistan. As we see ना कि annexation हो सकती है. So they annexed with Pakistan when in 19 after 1947, after the partition process basically, and the state of Jammu and Kashmir, which we knew which we know that it was a Muslim majority state, and it had a Hindu ruler, Maharaja Hari Singh, and Maharaja annexed to India while the population wanted to annex with Pakistan. So it is a disputed territory, it is a disputed state. It was a state, and it is still at times addressed as a state. It does not mean that it is a state like Pakistan, Afghanistan, China, Russia, or anyone else. Na? If you can, states of United States of America. Uh, United States of America call its uh, the units there are not regarded as provinces, they are regarded as states. So there is a New York state, there is a Washington state, there are different states that it comprises of a state. It is a confederation. Na? So these states of United States, like New York, has their own government, their own population. They have a territory, but they do not have sovereignty. They have given their sovereignty to United States of America. So USA as a sovereign power act on their behalf. These states like that of Hyderabad, Deccan, they have given their the right of sovereignty, their right of defense and foreign policy to India. This is a disputed state, and the state of Swat, Chitral, and Bahawalpur annexed themselves with Pakistan. So Pakistan is now a sovereign power over these states, and it manages their foreign policy, its defense, their defense, and exercise all the elements of sovereignty for them. Another thing here is how have modern states evolved? So modern states, basically there has been a history of states that once there were city states, as we know, in times of Aristotle and Plato. Then there were two kinds of rules, either empires or feudalism. Like there were feudal lords who governed, they had some territory over which they governed. There were different tribes under their supervision, and they used to administer them. Empires by different emperors and rulers, and they had a vast territory under their control. And many of the small states, like that of we have discussed about Hyderabad, Deccan, and uh, these have the Missouri Strait, or if you study the Mughal history of United India or subcontinent, there were different states that annexed themselves with the Mughal Rajas, Mughal Badshahs. So those were the empires, Mughal Empire. So it does not mean that these states had all their controls vested to the empire, but there was a kind of settlement between the ruler and the ruler of that particular state. So now, in the world order we are living in, is that of nation states, or that is regarded as states. These modern states and the elements we have already discussed came into being or existed after the Protestant uprising in Europe, and it was basically the end of religious interference in state matters, the Protestant uprising. So later there was a military uprising, and a sociologist, Charles Telly, famously summarized, wars made the state and the state made the war. After Protestant uprising, states like uh, get to know if they want to have their sovereignty and they want to protect themselves from outside influence, they need a strong military. So when they needed a strong military, they started building up their arms and their armies. So war made the state. This they were fighting for territory. The different rulers were fighting for territory, for rule, for occupying lands, and and expanding their influence. Now, so war made the state. It was the war, it was the arms that helped them making a state, and this state again made a war to protect itself. They made an external enemy for themselves to protect themselves, to build up their military, to build up their arms. Economic development, it is another feature of a modern state, and that is economic development. The kings knew that to provide themselves with the protection and stability with a wide economy is important. If they want to purchase arms, they want to maintain a large army, they need finances for that. So economic development was important. So there was kind of a settlement between the monopolies and production of certain goods, that states decided that they are good at producing these things, so they will trade in these products, and in return, like they allowed people to establish their monopolies, their businesses, and they collected tax from all those people, and then they built up their armies to safeguard their interests. The formal state system, which we recognize as states now, was a result of Treaty of Westphalia in 1648. It is a very important event. We'll study it inshallah, at some time in history, in future. So the Treaty of Westphalia is important because it ended the 30 Years' War. Like we studied now, the Protestant uprising. So the 30-year war ended. The states were fighting over the influence and over the dominance of religion. Basically, it was kind of a war between religions that they who will be prevailing the rest of the world and who is going to rule the world. So the 30 years of war between different rulers ended, and they agreed that every state has some right of sovereignty, and they recognize the rule of state sovereignty. That every state has the right to govern itself, has the right to avoid any external interference in their matters. So for now, it is it. I hope you people have understood it. If there is any question, you can ask.